Den här matchen kommer bli bruten så
väldigt avlägset 2004. I finalen mot Kanada fick
frei. Och dann krieg
Hi everyone, good to see you again, Happy New Year. It's been months since this channel produced a video due to exhaustion from work and health issues, but I pledge to be more active from now on. Anyway, let's get started. So I've covered American sport fans on this channel, but on today's episode we'll be heading further north. Now, we will mainly talk about soccer and hockey in this episode, but before we do that, I want to briefly discuss other sports in Canada, because I believe it highlights something, namely the mentality of the Canadian sports fans. It would seem that Canadian sport fans' mentality is not only reserved to the game of hockey. Although this mentality is not to be found in all sports, it would seem that tradition is definitely found in Canadian sports, as evident by the clear difference in attendance in some sports in Canada and Sweden. Yeah, suffice to say, it will take a huge while before these kind of sports will take hold in Sweden. Partially because of tradition, partially because of game of football or baseball, for example, can last up to several hours, which makes it hard for Swedes to show enthusiasm. Not to mention the entertainment aspect mindset that is established in both American and Canadian sporting events that is strange to Swedish people. As we discussed earlier in this episode, there's much differences between Canadian and Swedish sports. But in the game of hockey and soccer, there are similarities as well as differences, which we will discuss right now. Now, hockey may be slightly different in Sweden and Canada in terms of league structure, etc. In certain aspects, Canadian fans are crazy.
Joan! Suck my Joan!
Dude, what are you doing? Let's go!
Canadians like to think they're kings of crazy when it comes to hockey. But suffice to say, there are times where Swedish hockey fans go to further length than Canadian hockey fans. Another difference between Canadian and Swedish fans is how they operate. Despite their mentality, Swedish fans are clearly more organized than Canadians in hockey. Unlike Canadian arenas, Swedish arenas has a short end of the arena, dedicated to the fanatical fans to stand up and sing the entire game. It's in the nature of Swedish hockey fans to voice their rebellious resistance. That is the madness that is the Swedish hockey fans. That's not to say that there isn't madness within the Canadian fan base, because
Boston sucks! Boston sucks! I'm getting things thrown at me!
Go Boston, man, go Boston!
it seems the madness is one of the things Swedish and Canadian hockey fans have in common. Now, of course, it's important to point out that not all the craziness we talked about so far in the video is always dominating the hockey games in Sweden and Canada. It is, however, important to remain factual in these conversations. Now, what's different between Swedish and Canadian hockey fans is how they organize themselves in issues related to hockey. Swedish hockey fans not only voice their opposition to something, they also cooperate with other supporter clubs and groups to convey the interest of the fans to Swedish Hockey Federation, or SIF, through the Union of Hockey Supporters. And of course, they put up banners. Sometimes support clubs produce these banners, other times supporter groups. Banners, organizing the union, TIFO, etc. is all made possible through paid membership in our support clubs, where we also attend annual meetings and vote. These things don't seem to be found among Canadian hockey fans. Mostly it's fan hubs or fan events organized by the club instead of the fans. So, to summarize, both Swedish and Canadian hockey fans are crazy, but as we discussed, a different kind of crazy. Now, in the game of soccer, there's, like in hockey, differences, but a lot more similarities. As we have discussed before, like Americans, Canadians has also stepped up to the plate when it comes to supporter culture on the stands. It appears to be more organized in soccer than in the NHL among Canadians. Key factor? Influences from Europe, obviously. In the NHL, it's pretty much calm. Although atmosphere exists in the NHL. In the Canadian Premier League, it seems more open-minded and progressive. Not only do they seem to have support groups and support clubs where you pay for a membership and thus obtaining voting rights, they also have active support on the stands. As Swedish fans does. Now, I've so far discussed mostly the support in the Canadian Premier League. In the MLS, the support of the Canadian fans are more massive. Now, the MLS is way older than CPL, with more teams and therefore more fan bases. But as we can conclude, the Canadian support on the stands, like the Americans, has moved forward in both MLS and CPL. But can they measure up to Swedish support? Well... Not quite, in my opinion. But then again, both leagues are young, as are their supporter culture. With time, perhaps their support will progress even further. In making of this video, I researched as much as I could regarding ownership and found little difference between American and Canadian ownership model. Now, as we discussed in the video about American sport fans, in the NHL the clubs are owned through several corporations, and in the soccer the ownership model appears to be the same as CPL, namely that the teams are centrally owned by the league. Now, the difference of course is that the clubs in the MLS do the work regarding contracting the players, but the MLS technically owns the contracts. In the CPL, the contracts are owned by the teams. Whereas in Sweden, as we have discussed before, operates under the 51% rule, or as it's known in Germany, the 50+1 rule. In this video, we have discussed Canadian sports and sports fans, but the similarities between American and Canadian sports and sports fans makes me think of some of the ideas I gave in the video about American sport fans, namely democracy. As I've watched all of the videos I collected in making of this video, I noticed, as I talked about Americans, that Canadians aren't that different from us Swedish in some aspects. Meaning that both American and Canadian has stepped up to the plate when it comes to the stands, and both of them show some progressive spirit which both MLS and CPL can benefit from. This makes me convinced that more democratic input, like the ones in support clubs and support groups have, are examples to follow. Although Canadian sports, specifically soccer and hockey, won't have the kind of ownership and structure we have in Sweden anytime soon, but with a little democratic adjustment, it's one step closer, at least, in that direction. Well everybody, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I know it's been a while. Don't forget to follow these pages on the screen. Any other pages we have, Instagram, Twitter/X is on the description down below, and I'll see you in the next video.